children?
The perpetrator of that horrific terrorist attack in Manchester knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that that venue was going to be, relatively speaking, a soft target, and he knew that many of the people at the concert would be children, would be teenagers, and therefore he saw an ideal opportunity to kill, to massacre, to murder as many people as possible, all in support of his perverse, depraved ideology, which of course is Wahhabism. I have great admiration for MI5 and the police in the UK. They are working every single day of the week to protect British civilians in towns and cities across the UK, to protect them against a dreadful, menacing threat to our security in this country. However, MI5 and indeed no security service in the world can guarantee 100% security, and I don't believe at the moment it's fair to say whether MI5 did make mistakes. We have to wait for the full investigation. But I would add this, that in the last 7 years, the Conservative government of David Cameron and the Conservative government now of Theresa May have presided over a policy of reducing police numbers in Britain. Many police officers have lost their jobs in the last 7 years, since 2010. And it is absolutely critical now, more than ever, that there are as many police officers on our streets in the UK. So I sincerely hope that Theresa May will reverse the policy of decreasing police numbers in Britain. Well, I think we need to wait to see what the investigation actually discovers. I do think it's too early at the moment, but there is no question about it that MI5 and the police in the UK are understaffed. The resources that they require to meet head-on this menace from Wahhabist terrorism requires far more resources, and it's inevitable that MI5, British police, they are going to make mistakes. Potential terrorists are going to slip through the net, and that is regrettable, but I can only reiterate the point again that more resources must be devoted to MI5 and to the British police. And it's a pity that Trident has been renewed, because Trident will cost nearly £200 billion. Trident is not going to be used, and I would have liked to have seen a large proportion of that £200 billion figure diverted to the budget for MI5 and to the budget of the British police, so they can track down and arrest would-be terrorists in Britain. Well, sadly, the horrific Manchester terrorist attack was not the first in Britain, and regrettably it will not be the last. There is no question about it that there is a significant percentage of the Muslim community in Britain who have become radicalised, who are following the Wahhabist ideology of Saudi Arabia. But also we have to discuss British foreign policy, because British foreign policy has made this terrorist threat to Britain, this Wahhabist threat to Britain, all the worse. Britain helped destabilise Libya. That has now created a presence in that country for ISIS. It has also created the refugee crisis. In Syria, once again, Britain has helped to destabilise the Syrian government, and Britain is actively supporting different Wahhabist groups in Syria, for example al-Nusra and the so-called Free Syrian Army. And many British civilians have gone to Syria to fight with those Wahhabist groups, and many of them have come back. And when they were in Syria, what were they learning to do? They were learning how to fire guns, how to fire RPGs, how to put bombs together, how to explode bombs. Lo and behold, they're back in the UK, and they are going to use that knowledge they learnt in Syria to devastating effect. And Manchester encapsulates that. No, that's not entirely true. There's no question about it that with the refugees who came into Europe from Syria, from Libya and other countries, do contain a percentage of would-be terrorists. They contain a percentage of Wahhabists, no question about that. So that in itself is a serious threat to Europe. But in Britain, as you correctly said, the people who carried out the terrorist attacks were born here. They were British nationals, which highlights a problem. And the problem is this: for decades, many Muslim people in Britain have been leading a life which is completely incompatible with British norms, with British values. Many Muslims in the UK live a segregated life. They have not assimilated, and they are also influenced in their mosques and in their Islamic schools by Saudi sermons, by Saudi DVDs, and by Saudi books, which of course extol Wahhabism, and they call for the killing of anyone in Britain who does not follow the teachings of Wahhabism. So, for example, Christians, for example, Jews, women who work, women who drink wine, etc., etc. So there are lots of Muslims in Britain whose minds have become poisoned, and this goes back many decades. You can trace it back 40, 50 years, and that is the fault of successive British governments for not having realised that any community in Britain must assimilate, they must adopt British values, they must not be living a segregated life. Well, a lot of the Muslims in Britain are, of course, either immigrants or their parents or their grandparents were immigrants, and it has to be said that there is a fairly significant percentage of Muslims in Manchester who are from North Africa, who are from the Middle East, and also from Somalia. And a lot of people from Somalia came to this country during the 1990s. Now, the British government didn't think about whether they should be allowing people from Somalia to come to the UK, because Somalia has long been a hotbed of Islamic fundamentalism, and now we see that numerous Somalians recently and in years gone by have been arrested by the British police, have been arrested by MI5 because they have become radicalised while here, or they were radicalised when they came